where we are right now. The first thing, and I am now recording, the first thing that I will share with you is we were very pleased at the responses, the number of responses from our community survey. And again, that survey is open to all members of the community. And that means anyone from employees to children, to parents, guardians, to folks who don't have kids in the school. We really tried to get it out far and wide. And we did receive over 1,500 responses, which is good because it gives us a lot of anecdotal, qualitative data to consider as we're having conversations. What's not good is that much of the data is really just divided almost pretty evenly when you start thinking about how folks feel related to returning to schools. So there isn't a definite designation to one side or the other. There really is more of a peppering of feelings regarding this question. But then thinking about that, that's understandable. Why? Because everybody has an idea about how best to approach this challenge. And every individual idea is a good one because it's about their personal situation. So for parents and guardians, they're thinking about returning to school. They're thinking about what's going to work for their family. For employees, they're thinking about returning to school. They're thinking about what's going to work for their family, or how that might impact them personally, or from health wellness standpoint. So the point is, everybody's feedback is important, and everybody's feedback is accurate because it's representative of their perspective. So we're trying to, and we continue to incorporate all of that into our thinking. And certainly, we keep taking as much information from our community members as possible, thinking about it, synthesizing it, and trying to utilize it to achieve our goal. And our goal, of course, is to bring as many of our educational community members back to school, but making sure that health and safety is the very first concern. And that's always been our approach. That will continue to be our approach. There simply is too much that we don't know about this particular health crisis. And what we want to make sure we're doing is we're being conservative and we're being safe and smart. So that means, having a plan in place that is going to serve our children and serve our community, while at the same time keeping everybody safe. And that plan is really coming together, and it's coming together because of the hard work of this committee, building-based committees, and all of the folks who are sort of contributing to the collaboration related to trying to work through what is really a very interesting challenge. Now, many of you are probably thinking, how can you think about and how can you start talking about bringing so many people, right? I mean, you talk about density, you're trying to reduce density in school buildings, but you're still going to be bringing hundreds of people together when in public life we still, for instance, can't go and dine indoors, or health facilities are closed, or a number of other things that are still in continuation from the New York pause back in the spring. We're thinking about that too. We have been working really hard with our counterparts up in Albany to make sure that our views and our concerns and our thoughts are being shared. I know the WPTA, I know ASA, I know CSEA, I know PTA have all been doing the very same thing. NISBA has been, NISCUS has been, all these acronyms of folks who are invested in supporting our children have all been doing the same thing. And for the most part, it's been a conversation related to let's be smart about how we approach this. So at the county level here, just so you're also aware, we're coordinating very closely with all of our regional partners, and we're making sure to the extent possible that we're trying to mirror how folks are approaching with the reopening of schools. We're also coordinating at the county level to provide for training and updates regarding personal protective equipment, PPE, cleaning and sanitizing of facilities, food services, and communication, so that all school districts are part of the same, on the same page, if you will, with regard to these very important areas that go into a regular school day. We have 2 more of those meetings that'll take place today, and I'm happy to tell you that yesterday we had over 100 participants in each seminar, from different participants from different school districts in each seminar, and that's really great. And there were all different types of folks represented, different types of stakeholders represented. And so that's going to continue, I think, to strengthen us here in Westchester, because we do know that downstate where we are, in our community, we are a much more densely populated area as opposed to other areas in the state of New York. So our approach to all of these issues has to be from a very unique standpoint, and we have to consider the density of our communities moving forward. With that said, I do want to give an opportunity, Dr. Longobardi. Thank you so much for being here with us again today. And I just always like to give you the opportunity to give us any updates or insight that you might have from the medical field.
Hi, thank you. I guess the only thing that's relatively new, but everyone I think has been hearing about it, is the big delay in testing. So I hope that will improve in the next few weeks before we get back to school, because I think that's going to be very important to be able to turn around a test quickly. I know in our practice at WestMed, we have now stopped doing asymptomatic COVID testing for campers and going to grandma's house sort of thing. And I hope that other people will also do that. Other people are doing it. I think White Plains Hospital has a tent outside, and they used to use it for triage. I believe they're now doing just asymptomatic testing over there. And not that it's any faster, it's taking about 7 to 10 days. But hopefully it will allow us to just see the kids who are sick. And I am, happy to report that there, have been no uptick in COVID. We hear about it from Governor Cuomo, I guess, and some of the young adults, but, we are continuing to see kids who are sick, and we test everyone who's sick, and we haven't been really finding anything positive, which is great.
That is great. Thanks so much, Doc. Really appreciate it. Detective, I know you're on with us as well. Detective Christina Brown's here. Thank you so much. Those of you know Detective Brown is one of our SROs. Christina, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in from public safety. If there's anything, I don't know. If there's not, it's okay.
Good morning, Joe. Also, my lieutenant, I believe, is on with us. So I don't have anything thus far. Lieutenant Doherty, you have anything? Looks like no.
All set. All right, great. Thanks, Chris.
It seems like all is good right now.
Good, good, good. Thank you. Thanks, LT. Okay, great. So are there any initial questions before we go into a report out from our subgroups? Okay, great. Why don't we go ahead and we'll start off this time with operations. We do have some good updates from operations. And Ann, you want to take us there?
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Morning.
We had a full operations subcommittee on the 24th on Friday, and there we were able to really solidify some things that were important. The most important thing was how we're going to communicate with our employees and how we're going to communicate with our parents as far as the daily health checks. Our K-12 alerts system that we currently use has really responded, and we have a PowerPoint I believe Dr. Rick can briefly share, but essentially it will allow us to send out alerts to our employees in the morning, whether it be at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. There's an app. There's also that you can put onto your phone, and there's also forms that can be used via email and so forth. And that the employee needs to respond to that. And if they don't, they'll get a reminder, let's say by 6 a.m. And if they still don't respond, or they respond in the positive, then that information will get routed. So if it's a non-response, most likely it'll go to the appropriate office within that building. And if there's a response related to a health issue, it'll get routed to the health office in that particular building. The same thing with our parents. The requirement is for periodic questionnaires. So the goal would be to be sending that out weekly to a student's family. And, we'll certainly make provisions if, folks do not have access, but I believe that there would be a call-in feature as well and that Maggie and her team are looking to make sure that they have resources at the buildings in order to make sure that they can catch these folks before they come in or help them do the screening when they get there. Ron and his team are working with K-12 to get this set up. You know, I think it's a great answer to a difficult question. It's got our database already set up, and we'll be able to really utilize this effectively. We're also looking for legal counsel to provide us information. We want to be able to have parents provide assurance about they're doing the temperature checks in the morning before their child leaves for school. That's what the guidance is indicating is preferred, is that this is done at home by parents. This way we don't risk kids coming to school accidentally.
And can I just give you an update? I did meet within the committee. I just so you know, I did meet with council yesterday, and they will be fashioning the appropriate assurances that can be utilized. So we'll be able to figure out how often we'd like to send that out. I am recommending, and our council was agreeing that it should be sent out multiple times per year.
Periodically.
Likely at natural breaks where continuity of school day attendance would be going down.
Great, thank you, Dr. Rick. It saves me an email this morning. So that part from health and safety, and I'll let each of my subcommittee members talk a little bit, but let me just touch upon transportation. We had a meeting this morning to solidify things with the bus provider, National Express. It is clear that you know, we're not permitted to have hand sanitizers on the buses, that they're combustible. We are waiting still for a determination from the Department of Transportation regarding the ability to use partitions between seats. Although there have been several issues raised about that aspect, having to do with health and safety, you know, curtailing airflow, visibility of children, sound of children on the bus. So we're going to have to really wait for DOT's decision before we can push that. We certainly, the bus company, we talked about cleaning and disinfecting, and that would be done between the routes. They're prohibited from carrying any cleaning and disinfecting products on the buses while they're in motion. But we will be making sure that students are wearing their face coverings. We believe that will achieve social distancing by the fact that, you know, based on the survey results, we'll have the majority of parents who will be bringing their students to school, and, you know, those who might not be coming to school. And we'll certainly provide additional buses. The one thing that we do need to quickly come and get information on is, you know, the special education students, and making sure that if we need larger buses to accommodate that riding population, that we need that information quickly, because we're not assured that we'll be able to get those larger buses, because we are going to route and assume a full fleet similar to last year. What else? There was one other thing about transportation. Sergio, do you wanna, is there anything I'm missing?
Missing just a Z-Pass that we're looking to move forward with that. And I just want to make it clear that the cleaning and disinfecting of the buses will be in between shifts and not in between routes, because we're not able to carry any of those products on the school bus at this time. Right.
When I say AM and PM, that's not shifts?
I thought it was between routes. So
between AM and PM, yeah. And the Z-Pass will be very critical. The thing that we also need to really get solidified is the students that'll be attending which days, because we want to be able to make sure that even though we're going to route as if everyone is in every day, we still want our drivers and to be able to program the system so that we know what students are supposed to get to school on which day. This way there's no issues with mistakes, and it facilitates contact tracing. So that's a critical piece. I'm gonna ask Frank to kind of give us an update. I believe he had we had you know, we've been meeting, we've had over 10 meetings, you know, with subcommittees, but there were a number of subcommittees this week. And I think if Frank's on the line, he had a subcommittee this week that maybe give us an update. No, Frank?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Can't,
So
couldn't, yeah.
So we did meet yesterday, our subcommittee meeting. We went through our cleaning procedures. We also went through what we're going to be doing with PPE. Or I guess I was on a Zoom meeting yesterday with the county on how we're going to get PPE with them. The state sent guidelines and gave us all the contracts they have, but apparently, you know, I've been calling all those contacts and none of them have PPE. So it's going to be interesting. I just had 3 orders from Granger. Today got notifications that I was supposed to get delivery on August 8th. And they just pushed the deliveries back to August 26th and 24th.
Frank, are those, I'm sorry to interrupt, are those primarily for face coverings, but masks?
No, we're talking about hand sanitizer.
Okay.
You know, things like that. Gowns and that we could get. You know, disposable face masks, there's not an issue. But some of the other products that we're trying to get, stations, hand sanitizer stations and other things, those are being pushed back. And just in general, just equipment otherwise, you know, so those are some of the gloves. Gloves is probably the biggest thing. You can't get a nitrile glove unless you get latex, but you're limited in quantities. You know, we're looking for 44,000 gloves a month. So that's what we're looking for. So those are some of the challenges that we're going through. Now, on a good note, we got all the touchless or non-contact thermostats, thermometers that we're putting at the schools that we have at Ed House. So we received them yesterday and we're installing them at the schools and the buildings now. So that's going on right now. There's a lot of things. The list is long. Furniture in the classrooms, we're going through this with my staff, you know, how we're going to train and put the bio product in and set that up. I know we got a lot of teachers that have asked us to come in early to set up, but we want to get the classrooms ready, spray the bio product. We really don't want people in the building almost until the last 2 weeks of August. The last week of August would be better for setting up. So those are some of the things. After school programs, we're looking at shutting down after school programs to just the after school program itself. No other athletics, no nothing. We're going to be shutting the buildings down so that we can go in and deep clean them. I don't want to say deep clean. We're going to go in, clean them, and sanitize them. That's about it. If anybody have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Frank, there's so much. Thank you for that. I just also wanted to just let the committee know, I know it was a conversation. We are in fact looking at tents for outdoor.
Yes.
Of course, there's supply chain issues with that, and there's also red tape in terms of getting certified by the state education department to utilize the tent as an educational space.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's, I guess, 2 things. I guess the question is that what are we going to be using the tents for? Because if it's going to be for somewhat of a classroom or just outside, and I think some of them asked me about sides and heating and all that if we're going into winter. That brings us to a whole new realm of setting up. And I'd like to know if we're going to use them as just to have the kids outside to take a break or have a class out there during the good weather. And if we're going to have bad weather, what we're going to set up for. I really need to know that because that changes the whole price and the dynamic of setting tents.
I think what we had talked about, if I'm not mistaken, is really a good weather scenario, not creating a heated space or anything like that, because we know that that's going to create many more issues that could actually have unintended consequences.
Right. Well, one of the issues we brought up this morning was, and I don't want to belay it, but security. We have an open tent. We have kids out there. Now we got to talk about security. So that's the end. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. Maggie, do you want to give us an update on where your committee is at?
Yes, we met yesterday. And basically we were talking more about isolation rooms and the need to make sure that we have different isolation rooms throughout the district, you know, within the schools. We talked about the asthma protocol that I had just written with help of Dr. Longobardi. We wanted to make sure that if we needed to take care of an asthma child, that we could do it in a very safe and efficient way. We talked about if we have to give a nebulizer, which is the last resort, we would have to do it in an isolation room. The nurse would have to wear the proper PPE, which would be an N95 mask. That room would have to be shut down for 2 hours and then would have to be disinfected prior to the opening up of the, room again. So I spoke to Dr. Longobardi and we are pushing to do more of the inhalers with the spacers. Every child has to have a spacer if we're going to be giving the inhalers. And we have a specific protocol to make it safe as possible. We also, just to reiterate as far as the PPE is concerned, I do have some stock for the nurses of N95s and for the healthcare workers. We do have masks for every employee and every child. There's going to be 3 masks given out and they're the material ones. So, you know, you can wash and wear them. So we do have masks for everybody. I have been working on getting face shields for every employee. And, you know, what else did I order? Oh, and I am also going to be looking into getting hand sanitizers, but mine will be for the individual ones, for the little offices and the extraneous areas that may be off the beaten path and they're not near a dispenser. So I'm going to order extra ones of those just in case we need them through the district. What else? So I've been working on PPE and policy, basically. And that's it.
And Maggie, as far as the latex gloves, you know, those are going to primarily be needed for when staff might be in contact with students. It's not wearing gloves every day. You know, we want to wash hands. We want to use our sanitizers. We have sanitizers that we're going to provide to all the classrooms and all the appropriate spaces. But it's really the fact that we need the gloves when we're working with children directly.
So we're only going to use vinyl gloves because a lot of people can be allergic to latex. Anytime that somebody really touches a child, like especially when we have, our special ed population and, our children that need a little more hand holding, we have to wear gloves. So the employees have to wear gloves if they touch the children. However, if you're in a classroom situation where you're not going to be touching a child, you do not need to wear gloves. You will get gloves provided, but the problem is that, wear the gloves, disinfect your area, take your gloves off, wash your hands, okay? If you touch a child, put the gloves on, touch the child. When you finish with that interaction, take the gloves off and wash your hands. You shouldn't have the gloves on all day, touching everything, touching the child and then touching your desk and then touching everything else. Because
but you're going to train all of us, right? You're going to have everyone.
Yep.
Right.
It defeats the purpose of wearing gloves. So, think about gloves as the extra barrier. You touch what you need to touch, and then you take it off and you throw it out and you wash your hands. You don't leave them on because then it's just like you having dirty hands, right? So, so that's a story with the gloves. Also, I wanted to go over the screenings, and I want to assure everyone that if a child is not able to be screened, let's say a parent doesn't have a thermometer, or they were having a bad day and they didn't, take the temperature on the child, we do have those temperature screenings that are going to be put up in every building that Frank already has. They can go right in front of the screening thing. We can verify that the child has no fever and make sure that they're okay and move on with the day. If a parent is not able, they don't have a computer, they're not able to do the electronic, questionnaire, we can provide them. Those are going to be far and few between. We can do it via paper once a week. Okay, so everybody will be represented. So that's pretty much it with me.
Great, thanks, Maggie.
You're welcome.
I also know, as far as food service in the cafeteria, Ed Merritt, is not with us today, but he is working with the principals, trying to work out that schedule, whether we're able to utilize the cafeterias or other large spaces to set up the periods of which lunch will be served. The guidance has clearly said we have to follow the national, federal and state school lunch program, and we need to do this as well as for those students who are going to be on remote. So that work is ongoing. Visitor management, I'm going to let Sean give us an update, about that world and the fact that our focus is no visitors unless it's absolutely necessary and pre-planned appointments, but I'll let Sean provide an update, which I thought I saw him before.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just to give you a quick update on visitor management. So far, it's pretty good. We're at this point, Frank's starting to put those dividers up on the security desks. So we're going to manipulate the equipment so that people will be able to put we're going to limit visitors, but if we have to have a visitor, they'll be able to put their own driver's license inside the Raptor system, and then the security person will be able to print out the badge. So we'll have less contact between a visitor and our own people. So that's going pretty good. As far as the questions, I got together with Maggie. We're going to have questions that'll be asked of any visitor that comes. Where have they been? Have they had any symptoms? The standard questions that we'll be using throughout the district so that we stay uniform. And then just to add a little bit about arrival and dismissal for operations, that's been going pretty decent. However, it's not going to be pretty. We know that we're going to have a lot more parents driving their kids to our schools, even though that we're at 50% coming in. But when you get out the math and after looking at that survey, we know we're going to have a lot more people on the roads. Sergio and I did meet with the police department, Captain Kralik. We've had individual meetings. I've spoken with Detective Brown, Lieutenant Doherty about all the schools, what we can do, individual meetings with principals, everything that we need to do to keep working towards that opening day. Today I met with Frank and we wrote POs for getting our CDC signage laminated, POs for radios, additional cones, floor distancing. We're working on how we're going to make that happen. There's a couple different options, but things are going in the right direction. That's whether it's tape on the floor, the 6-foot distancing, all those kinds of things that we have to get done. We're definitely going in the right direction.
Well, thank you.
Sean, we may want to think about additional training for staff on Hipaa and Ferpa if we're going to have lots of people collecting medical information, right? So if we're going to use our security guards to do those health screenings, we're going to need increased Hipaa and Ferpa training.
It's going to be in the software, isn't it? Going to be in the Raptor software, Sean? That they're filling out the questionnaire.
Okay.
Not that
So nobody's taking.
No, we're not having individuals take those questions. It should go into that system. And I would assume that if they answered yes to something, then that would just go through throwing up a flag and direct them to calling out the nurse or something.
Right. That's exactly how it will go.
Okay, Sean, I think Layla has a question.
Go ahead, Layla.
So when you guys were talking about dividers, sorry, let me just pull this up. My mom found these really cool dividers. I'm sorry. Where is it?
Layla, if you want to email me the link, I can put it up for everybody
Yeah.
to see.
And it's like if kids are worried, they could carry around the individual dividers so that they don't have to be in contact with other people. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, send that to me, Layla. We'll take a look at it.
Okay.
So Dr. Riga, I'm sorry, Leah, go ahead.
All right. My mom will send it to you. Thank you. I also have to go, so I'm sorry. Bye. Thank you.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
Bye, Layla.
Thanks. Bye.
Any other questions?
So Dr. Riga, I think that's it from operations.
Thank you. Of course, lots happening, and we'll keep plugging away. Thanks everybody for all your hard work. Deb Algard, you want to take us off next?
Sure. So we've done a lot of vetting of the special education plan this week with staff, with parents will be tomorrow, and we're really seeking input on increased services for students with disabilities in person. And we've done a lot of problem solving around access, and so it does look like we will be able to bring our special education students in, whether it's 2.5 days a week, 4 days a week, or 4.5 days a week. And it's in a very strategic way with clear criteria so that parents will really understand why some children are being brought back and some children aren't. With regard to the social and emotional learning work that's going on, we've transitioned from the reopening committee to a district-wide committee. That committee met yesterday. We reviewed the results of the social and emotional learning survey from staff. We identified the areas for professional development, and we asked people to volunteer, although I'm not sure they realized it was going to be a working committee. We asked people to volunteer for 4 subgroups. Number 1, to collect resources for parents and for staff on different aspects of social emotional learning, community resources, but also resources that they can use to support their practice, both at home and at school. Professional development, again, for both staff and for parents on how to support emotional wellness, stress management, all those issues that were identified through the surveys for both families and for staff. A screener tool to see if there's an easy way that we can screen students with parent consent as they come back to school to identify who may require additional supports and services. And then finally, a multi-tiered system of supports. And that is to identify what can be done universally for all students. That would support about 80% of our students in classrooms and through general building activities. And then what we would need to provide support to the other 20% children, 20% of the children, again, in a layered approach. We'll continue to meet as a district-wide committee. The members of that committee are on their building level teams. So we're hoping that there's a lot of cross communication between the buildings and the district so that we're all pulling in the same direction and getting parents, students, and faculty and staff what they need for a successful reopening to mitigate both anxiety and any kind of concerns people might have. That's it, Dr. Ritka. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Deb. You know, not that this has anything to do certainly with Deb or our program, but I think it is important to mention, and you probably all know about this, that unfortunately there was a spike of identified COVID-19 cases in a neighboring school district that was conducting extended school year. Minimal people, light density, but nevertheless, there was exposure. What we learned from that was that even during this period of time, when everybody, there aren't that many people involved, and everybody's doing their best, that the contact tracing aspects associated with, tracking down folks who may have been in contact with a positive case is really going to be a daunting task. So, to Deb's point, when we're bringing back children, we really want to make sure that we're doing it in a safe manner, and keeping a real close eye on those on density, and to the extent possible, minimizing the mixing to the extent possible. We know that that's not possible in every scenario, but just so that the committee is thinking about those types of things. Contact tracing is, of course, you can imagine if you had 42 school districts in the county operating all at the same time, and everybody has a case or two pop at the same time, that contact tracing apparatus is going to be stressed, particularly at the beginning. So just bear that in mind.
Dr. Ricca, about the SEL when we return to school, I know you're talking to everyone tomorrow, whatever, on Facebook. Are we going to be able to share with parents that really those first few weeks are talking about really we're checking in with the students? I know some families are really eager to get back to the academic part because of, maybe just being away from school and the summer slide and the COVID slide, all these things that we're talking about. But I just want to make sure that we do communicate to parents that those first few weeks are really a check-in, and the new routine is obviously a new normal.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you. I think, we always say Maslow before Bloom, right? We have to make sure that everybody's okay and really reconnect and begin to help folks cross that barrier that's in some people's lives has existed since March. And that's going to be a big part and portion of our initial foray into the academic year. Also teaching students how to engage with remote learning, because remote learning, of course, is going to look a bit different than it did in the spring. And making sure that we're, engaging in that process will be important at the outset of the year. Yeah, Gina, we'll definitely do that. Thanks. Okay, Mr. Pepper.
Good morning, everyone. That's a perfect segue into HR and trying to determine and ascertain our staff members' readiness to return to school. So thank you for the work that Deb and her committee is doing, and Maggie and everyone else. Yesterday afternoon, we received the final edits and approval from legal on a number of documents that we're going to utilize to help determine our staffing needs for September, and how many staff members we may or may not need to provide accommodations for, or some sort of other reasonable accommodation. The first thing that'll be going out, and will be going out in the next day or so, is the employee health survey. That information will determine the number of employees who perhaps have conditions that may need either accommodations or may prevent them, could potentially prevent them from coming back to an in-person situation. So that information will be going directly to Maggie so that she can give us an initial look at that information. We also have the COVID-19 leave request form, and that's a form that employees will use if they fall into one of 6 categories related to COVID-19. Obviously, I think we're all aware of the categories, whether you're being mandated to quarantine, childcare issues, if you come down with COVID-19, those kinds of things. So we have a form that's been put in place now that employees will need to fill out, indicating which condition they qualify for, and then the benefits, obviously, under the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act. The extended sick leave or the FMLA will kick in depending on those circumstances. We also have approval now for the accommodation request form. That'll be for people who, through reasonable accommodations, are able to return to work. So we're starting to see some of those requests come in. We now have the official form we'll be using for people to share that information with us. so that we can engage in conversation and determine whether or not what we can do is reasonable and whether they can return to work. All of those forms will be made available on an as-need basis. So as people indicate that they think they have an underlying condition that may need some accommodation, those forms will be provided for those employees to fill out. It'll require some documentation, obviously, from a healthcare provider. Will need to be included with those forms, and then we'll engage in the conversation determining what we can or cannot do to accommodate those employees. So that's obviously going to be very, very important. All that information is going to be going out shortly, so that we, here we are at the end of July and beginning of August, but we suspect it's going to take a while for us to work through that with all the employees. I'm working with my benefits specialist in my office to put a tracking mechanism in place for these forms, so that we can, when the employee submits the form, we have the date they submit it, how quickly it was, reviewed by HR, and the conversations take place regarding the accommodation. So we make sure that we're tracking these things, that we're handling them in a timely manner, so that we can quickly determine what we can do for employees to bring them back. So that's essentially where we are, and we're right where we need to be, I think, at this point, with it being the end of July, beginning of August. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Scott, I have a question just about the employee health survey. So when that's a requirement that all employees will complete this survey? Is that a requirement, or is it if you were interested in accommodations?
That's voluntary,
okay.
That particular survey. We're hoping employees will at the very least update their contact information, their emergency contact information. We understand that sometimes people may be reluctant to share personal health information, but that will be collected by Maggie as our nurse coordinator initially, so we make sure that anyone, especially if they have a serious medical condition, we need to be made aware of. And that's standard what we generally ask of employees now, but it's not a requirement. It's if they're willing to share that information.
Okay, because I was just wondering about the sharing. But in terms of if that information is voluntarily shared, it is just going to Maggie, right? Is that?
It's going to Maggie, the nurse coordinator. She can have access to that information in the event we have a serious issue that needs to be addressed. I don't know, Maggie, do you want to comment on that at all, or? I know Maggie's on the link.
I just want to let you know that everything is going to be coming to my office. The only piece that I'm going to be sharing is the updated telephone number so that we know we can reach you. And the emergency contact is going to be put on, for the district, because we want to make sure that if something happens within your building, they can reach your loved one. So, and also, if you, let's say, get exposed, that we can contact trace and actually call you and have the right phone number. So that piece of it will be shared with the district. Other than that, the health piece of it is going to stay with me on the lock and key.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's for Maggie's survey. Now, if an employee is requesting an accommodation or has one of the COVID-19, needs to quarantine, that does come through HR, because we're the ones that have to make the determination on those issues. So the private medical information stays at Maggie's level. Those asking for accommodations or experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, needing a leave, a temporary leave, or a longer leave, that is processed through the HR office.
Thank you, Scott. Dr. Hand, good morning.
The last meeting, I met with the elementary principals to talk about teacher expectations and responsibilities. We also had a meeting with the secondary principals and a separate meeting with Kara and David. And then I also want to mention that Gary West met with the elementary principals to talk about specials and to see how we could, potentially block the specials so that a special teacher in an elementary school, I don't know if everybody realizes it, but if they follow their full course load for a week, they see every child in the school building. And that's a lot of children for one teacher to see. So Gary's working with me and the principals to try to figure out if we could block like art and music and physical education and library media so that a group of children have them for a set number of weeks, so that one teacher would be seeing those same classes for like 3 weeks at a time. And the reason why we're saying 3 weeks at a time is because 3 weeks when children are in school, that would mean that a teacher, if they were in school for their rotation at the elementary level, would see them for 6 days, right? They would see them for Monday and Tuesday if they were in group A, and they would see them for week 1, week 2, and week 3. So that's 6 days. And 6 days is enough time to make a nice project happen. So in terms of art or music or phys ed, if they were like learning about a particular activity or engaged in something, it would be a nice rotation. The teachers would all be working all the time because each grade level or each set of classes would be in a different special rotation at any given time. I think the only concern that I have, and Chris Trias also expressed for that model, is that, you know, I can see having art as a residency for 3 weeks straight. I can see having music as a residency for 3 weeks straight. Not the most perfect thing, but considering the conditions, important, you know, to make sure that we're limiting that contact as much as possible. But having phys ed, I don't mind having it as a residency for 3 weeks at a time. I do mind not having it as a weekly activity. Like phys ed has to happen weekly to get children moving. And it's also part of the chancellor's regulations or the commission regulations too. So we're really trying to think of how we can make both of those things happen, right? How can we give kids the opportunity to do things like energizers and brain breaks and real, you know, activities for physical education and fitness on a weekly basis, but then see their teachers on that rotation. So that's something that we're thinking about for specials at the elementary school. I think our big things that I just kind of want to summarize for you as we're getting ready to, you know, unveil our plan, if you will, is the use of Seesaw and Schoology. That's pretty big for us because we've never really had learning management platforms that we use consistently across the schools. And the parent feedback that we received, and even the teacher feedback that we received, was really looking for something that was more consistent. So the way that we approached it is Seesaw for the early grades, giving a little bit of option, right? Kindergarten, everybody's using Seesaw. First grade, I think everybody is using Seesaw right now. When it gets up to second and third grade, depending on the elementary school, some schools went with Schoology, some schools went with Seesaw, but the important thing to know is that within a school, it's all the same. So if second grade is going to go with Seesaw, it's going to go with Seesaw in the whole school. And then after that little, you know, second, third grade, and I think there's one school that has fourth grade still using Seesaw. I think that's Ridgeway. After that, all the grade levels go into Schoology, which would be really nice because our children will start getting to know, and I see Rena shaking her head, yes, who's now turned into my assistant, by the way. I love Rena. You know, I think that by the time they get from elementary school into middle school into high school, you know, our students will eventually be very familiar with their learning management system, pandemic or not, which I think is very important. Also something that was from parent and student feedback and teacher feedback, establishing school schedules. So in a hybrid model, we will have an established school schedule, whether you're in school or you're out of school. And from an accountability measure, we will be taking daily attendance. So, you know, at the elementary level, we'll start the day with a morning meeting. At the middle school level, we'll be starting the day with some type of morning meeting if you're in 6th grade, or homeroom if you're in 7th grade. And at the high school level, it's going to be an advisory meeting that starts off the day. So that will be the first, you know, that will be the first entry point for attendance taking. So if you're home or if you're in school, the expectation is that you're there so that attendance can be taken. In terms of grading, our intent is to go back to pre-March 13th grading practices. I think grading practices that are consistent and explicit are very important. So I'm not saying that our grading practices were perfect before March 13th, but we will take that model and we will improve on them. With the help of the coordinators, I really hope to get, more consistency in grading across the board. So students will be assessed and feedback will be provided on a consistent basis. The next thing I wanted to mention was increased opportunities for synchronous instruction. So our lesson plan design will be synchronous components, asynchronous components, and independent learning or small group components. So with that said, at the high school level, the expectation would be that there would be a synchronous component to your lesson every day. And at the middle school level, that would be true as well. At the elementary level, it will look a little bit different because the elementary schools right now, we're thinking of starting off with a morning meeting that is live, ending the day with a closing meeting that is live, having check-ins for ELA and mathematics, maybe daily or on a rotating basis. We're still trying to figure that out. Having foundations, the foundations component of literacy would be live. And iBlock, so any kind of intervention would be live as well. That would be synchronous. So that's really a robust, look at synchronous instruction. And of course, we have to remember that this is going to be the first time ever that teachers have children in their classrooms and children at home. So we really need to give them the opportunity to figure out how that works out. I keep on saying to everybody, I can Zoom all day long, and I feel really confident right now that if 3 of you were in my office with me, I'd be able to engage with you and engage with the people on Zoom, but I think everybody has to reach that level of comfort. And that goes along with regular, substantial interaction between students and teachers, right? That's one of the assurances that we're going to have to check off on, and we want to make sure that that's true. So with that said, what's come up constantly is professional development for teachers. So professional development for teachers has been ongoing. As you know, we did a lot in the spring. And I also included in the plan that we have, the reopening plan, the professional development that we had running through the summer. So we had using Seesaw as a learning management system, Schoology basic, intermediate, and advanced workshops, setting up for successful remote teaching with Schoology, implementing Microsoft Teams for classroom instruction, using the Schoology big blue button for conferencing. If I work for Schoology, I'd have them change that name. K-12 remote workshop on designing hybrid learning environments facilitated by IDE, and that 4-day workshop is actually happening this week, and then not next week, but the following week. And I know that Deb Augarden also has set up specific IDE meetings for special education teachers. Becoming an Office 365 power user, responsive classroom core course, the responsive classroom advanced course, studying skillful teaching, promoting motivation, learning, and achievement, building engaging distance learning communities, grades 6 to 9, building an online community, 7 to 12, building community in a K-6 remote classroom. And that's only the things that we've done in district. That doesn't include all the opportunities that teachers have had to attend workshops at BOCES, both Southern Westchester and Putnam Northern Westchester, Teachers College, professional development, and also neighboring colleges and universities have also offered other opportunities that we sent teachers to. So we're very serious about professional development, and we will continue to offer the appropriate professional development, especially on Seesaw and MS Teams, Schoology, and the conferencing app for Schoology, and hybrid lesson design. What else did I want to mention? Parents were asking to ensure that instruction would be rigorous. And I think that saying that our curriculum and our instruction is aligned to New York State learning standards, and really supporting our teachers and understanding that even in a pandemic, we really have to teach our children according to those standards and alignment to those standards. So we'll be working on that. And I think assessment is something that we're going to need to work on. I just emailed a couple of things to Kathy and to Jennifer. That's the hot topic for the other assistant superintendents of curriculum and instruction today. It's all about assessment. And I think the one thing that we probably haven't mentioned at this meeting, and it's so difficult to figure out like what you've left off and where you are, but I think from the notes last time that we met, that we were talking about a high school model that was bringing in a certain portion of grade levels. And Ellen and her team met with the scheduler from Infinite Campus and came with a plan that I think is a very good plan, actually. It does reduce the density of the building, and it also allows 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders to come into the building at the same time. In order to be able to do that and be able to manage the configurations that happen in individual courses and electives, it would need to be broken down to a quarter. So 1/4 of the high school would come in on a Monday, the 2nd quarter would come in on a Tuesday, the 3rd quarter would come in on a Thursday, and the 4th quarter would come in on a Friday, meaning that throughout the week, every high school student has been at the high school for one day, for one full day. And then Wednesdays would be that remote learning day for all. And I think that this is a really nice plan because I like the fact that the high school comes together as a 9th through 12th grade building, because many of their classes are multi-grade level classes, so they really get that sense of normalcy and that real sense of a high school environment by having all the grade levels in at one time. I think the question will be, you know, a quarter of a class, why can't it be a half of the grade, you know, why can't it be a half of the school at one time? Because our high school is very large and we have a lot of teaching staff too and a lot of support staff. So once you increase that over a quarter, if you tried to get that up to a half, your classes where you get mixed groupings would go larger than social distancing would allow. And it's also just passing in the hallways and lunch service and getting children in and out of the building with social distancing. You'd be moving children around more in social distancing that you would run out of time in a school day to actually have any instruction happen. So I think that that was like some of the questions that we had. And then the other thing, looking at the plan, I'm looking at the assurances, and I put a little chart in there about the learning management for the elementary school because of those differences in the early grades. I wanted to point out that we put information about attendance, how attendance would be tracked, that schedules would be followed. There was information in there about technology and the level of access for students as well as teachers, knowing that that's what the assurances is asking us. It's not only about do the students have the technology that they need, but do the teachers have the technology and the internet access that they need, how we're going to provide that to them. And then any students without access to devices or internet access, we're not thinking that we would have that problem because we have a pretty robust ability of loaning devices, even if they are on a global delay. We have enough in-house devices to lend to children who are in need. And I think that Ron has a very robust, ability to provide internet access to, or through jetpacks if we need it. So we're not thinking that any of the students wouldn't have access to devices, but if we get into a unique situation where a student doesn't have access for some reason, we'd invite that student in more often to in-person learning if we could. Or if we were in a remote learning environment, we would provide hard copy work for that student to engage in. And I think I talked about everything else. And then just in terms of resources and needs, digital bookshelves for independent reading, online math manipulatives, TC units of study in reading and writing, the virtual lessons, take-home math manipulative kits for K through 5, take-home write-on whiteboard boards and markers for individual students in K through 5, take-home foundations, word boards for individual students K through 3, take-home art supplies for individual students K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, increased number of Imagine Learning licenses in English and Spanish for our dual language and E&L students, independent reading ebooks for K through 5 dual language classes, Wilson take-home kits for individual students that need them, increased supervision for morning entry, lunch, recess, and end of the day dismissal, walkie-talkies to communicate at morning entry, lunch, and recess and dismissal because people will be at different locations and there'll be more people. Layla would be happy to hear our acrylic clear partitions for the libraries and offices, and also acrylic clear partitions or separators for small group in-person instruction and for shared tables, and then clear containers for storing student supplies, classroom cameras and teacher headsets, and then iPads, keyboards, styluses, headsets, and microphones, especially for K through 5. Mostly we have that for the middle school and for the high school. And then the final thing was tents, folding tables, folding chairs for outside learning spaces. But I think that that was pretty much everything that we accomplished since our last meeting. And I wanted to share one thing that we had put in the plan just for consistency. Curriculum coordinators in collaboration with building principals will work with teachers in their respective departments to ensure an appropriate level of consistency with the use and posting of instructional materials and resources to Schoology and Seesaw. Designing effective hybrid lessons, providing meaningful feedback to students, monitoring and assessing student learning, and standards-based grading. So we want that in there so that we know that that's what our goal is as we really start to unveil our plan, and we know what parents want it, we know what students want it, we know what many of our teachers want it, and we're committed to, to making sure that we deliver.
I have some questions for you. Is that are you ready to take questions or?
Yeah, can I just ask 1 second though? Can we have just Mr. Bratcher? I just want to make sure that Mr. Bratcher has the opportunity to talk a little bit about Rochambeau in the same continuum, and then absolutely, Ms. Vitale, go to your questions.
Good morning, everyone. It's real simple. Our plan is to have students in every single day because of our low enrollment. During this time, especially in the first few weeks of school, the focus will be on preparing kids if we do have to go to a hybrid or fully remote learning situation as well. We are at an advantage because, like I said, we will be starting with full enrollment, and we will have that opportunity, unlike in the past in March when this took place, to really prepare students what this will look like if in a hybrid model, what this will look like if we were fully remote. So we're just excited to be able to get students in on a regular basis, because for many of our students, it really didn't fare well the past few months during school from March to June. And our kids and our parents are excited to be back, the feedback that we are receiving. So we're looking forward to a productive year and hopefully a full year of school from September to June if possible.
Thanks, Roger.
No, thank you for asking Paul to speak, because I did put in the plan that Rochambeau would be going full day following the regular schedule. So thanks for mentioning that. I just didn't mention it out loud. And then the other thing is there's an assurance for pre-kindergarten. So I also put just a little blurb in the plan about how we've been meeting with pre-K providers, reviewing the New York State guidance and the Department of Health guidance, that they will be developing continuity of learning plans at the school, at the sites, and it'll also detail in-person, hybrid, and remote learning for the pre-Ks.
So I'd like to say that I think that a lot of the ideas for the elementary school education seem to be very robust, and I would like to see some of the high school education just as robust, with the check-ins for math, ELA, and iBlock being on a daily basis. I think that perhaps the high school should think about the same thing for our main courses of math, science, social studies, and ELA. I mean, it seems like a lot of the conversation surrounds the elementary school kids, and then the high school is kind of like, oh, and in addition, the high school, even some of the verbiage used, the 50%, that we're going to be 50%, we're going to be 50%, and we're not going to be 50% at the high school. We're going to be 100% staff and 25% students. So maybe that comes out to 50%, but we're presenting this to the community as a whole. I think they hear 50% and they think 50% of the students are going to be in school, and that's a little misleading. So I think using the word hybrid model for the high school is a little misleading as well, because hybrid model by definition is, 2 to 3 days in school and the rest remote, and we're sending our kids to school 1 day a week. So I would love to see the high school become a little more robust. When you said about daily check-ins, you said they'd have to attend in the morning. Are they going to be checking in for each class each day when they're remote?
Yes. Can you let me respond a little bit to your question?
Sure.
Yes. So when I said, and Ernie could speak a little bit more to this too, because Ellen's not on the call anymore, but Ernie and Ellen met, I think yesterday morning, with her assistant principals. And when I'm saying that every class has a synchronous component and an asynchronous component and an independent or small group practice component, that means that every class has a synchronous component to it. So every class will have a check-in. There'll be a time during the day where your child has math or science or social studies at the high school, and there'll be a time where the teacher checks in, whether they start the lesson off together and make sure that everybody has a good understanding of the learning objective and what's going to be expected to happen during that time, and then check in again at the end of the lesson to give support or to answer any questions. But every lesson will have a synchronous component to it. We're not saying that half of the students can come in or that there's half of a density at the high school. What we needed to do is we needed to figure out how many students could come in so that when they were in their classes, we could practice social distancing. It's really about social distancing. It's not about the number of children that can come into a classroom, into a school building. It's once they get into the school building, how many children can you fit in an AP chemistry class, because they need to take AP chemistry because that's on their schedule. And you need to make sure that there's social distancing within each one of those configurations. So when you think of 300 classes running at the high school on any given, schedule, you need to make sure that each one of those spots that you're meeting the social distancing guidelines. And I know that Ernie's having this, he's having similar concerns right now at Highlands. Can he actually fit in, like what would be considered, almost half of the kids, because it's not going to be 50%, but almost, what's the number of children that he can invite based on the alphabet so that he can still maintain social distancing?
No, I understand the importance for social distancing, but I'm, thinking along the lines, like you talked a lot about specials for the elementary school kids and blocking. And if we took an approach similar with the high schoolers and maybe a phased approach where we start with the core classes, and maybe you have a math and science day one day, and then you don't have to bring in all the teachers. So you reduce your density because you're only teaching math and science.
I know that Ellen, that was Ellen's, before we even started planning, I think that Ellen's first thing was maybe we could bring them in by subject area. You don't have enough teachers to teach full day in a subject area because your subject area teachers are spread across a schedule. You're not teaching like, all of your kids science in one day or all of your kids social studies in one day. So even though like from an initial reaction, maybe we can do that and get more kids in the building.
I'm sorry, I'm losing you. You're freezing.
You don't have the teachers to
Is anybody else having a connection issue? Okay. All right, so one other question is, when you said the opportunities for synchronous, asynchronous, and independent learning, is there a percentage that is expected for each class, a percentage of those three tactics, or is like one kid might end up with like, a larger component of one than another?
So what we talked about was potential lesson plans, and those lesson plans would include elements or have to include synchronous elements. So since we're taking attendance, first of all, students are expected to report to each of their classes. We're taking attendance in every class throughout the day. So students are not, missing any of their subjects. Okay, whether they're in school or at home, okay, they're going to check into their class. Okay, and in addition to when they check in, which will obviously be synchronous, there are other portions of each lesson that can be synchronous. So we talked about student practice and exit tickets or formative assessment. Like, teachers are given a choice of which portion will be synchronous, but every lesson will have synchronous portions. And for students who may or may not be able to, if they're at home, stay for the entire lesson, there will be a mini lesson that is pre-recorded for each of those so that students can check back into that at some later time. So no one's missing any subject during their day. They in fact are responsible for every subject that's listed on their schedule.
And I just want to get back to the schedules at the elementary school as opposed to the secondary school. Students are scheduled into art and music classes as a cohort in their schedule, just like they're scheduled to any other class at the high school level or at the middle school level. The difference at the elementary level is that when I was a librarian at the elementary level, I saw every single child in the school from Monday through Friday. That doesn't happen at the secondary level, and that's why we're giving specials more attention at the elementary level, because we have to, because we don't want one teacher to teach 600 students in 1 week. It wouldn't be good for contact tracing. I mean, I've met with Frank on this, I've met with Maggie on this, and that's why we've gone that route. But it's not that we're not paying attention to specials at the high school and the middle school. We don't have to do the same redesign of their schedules. What we really need to do is make sure that there's social distancing, and then depending on what's going to happen in those schedules, if we need to move those schedules outside or if we need to move them indoor. Like, can we do that indoors or do we have to move them outside? If they're 12 feet of distance, then they have to be outdoors, or else they can't sing or they can't play musical instruments and stuff. So that's Gary's working K through 12, but the only change in schedule would be at the elementary level.
No, I understand what you're saying, but my thought, and not that I don't think specials are important for everyone, but if my child is going to school 1 day a week, then I'm not as much worried about art and gym as I am that she gets personalized instruction from the courses that are, you know, that I really can't help her with. I mean, I can say, we're going out for a walk today, or we're going to do yoga, or we're going to, you know, but I can't help her with chemistry, physics, trigonometry, geometry. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if they're only going to school 1 day a week, then that's why I'm saying maybe a phased approach for specials too, where then you have less kids in the building initially. I just feel like some of our approach was to keep everything, and maybe it's mandated by the state, I don't know, that we keep everything the same and try to do this. And I think that,
oh, I'm sorry.
You know, there's other, go ahead.
No, I just, you know, I think it's an important point that you're making, but I also think what's a real important point is just to remember that the remote learning experience is going to be much different than it was in the spring, as Mr. Spatafor was just, you know, speaking about. The idea is that you don't have to worry about chemistry, because even though you're not in the chemistry class that day physically, you're in the chemistry class that day, and you are going to have that contact that perhaps you didn't necessarily have in the spring. And I think that that's an important qualifier there. Hopefully, you know, for those of us who don't remember multivariate calculus, you know, it helps you to not be so nervous about those kinds of things, because you are going to have that 5 day a week school schedule where you are having your classes just in a remote fashion. I don't know if that helps.
No, it helps, but there are certain kids that are not going to raise their hand in a remote fashion, and the teacher's not going to see their puzzlement because she's going to be focused on the kids in the classroom. You know, it's a teacher can't be focused on the kids on the Zoom screen and in the classroom. So she's not going to read those nonverbals, you know, as well as they would if they were in the classroom more frequently.
No doubt, no doubt. And there is absolutely, and I think you illustrate very well how it is absolutely more advantageous to be in a classroom with a teacher any day of the week. In this instance, though, what I would say is very likely teachers will come to know their children, and regardless of whether or not you're sitting in front of me, I would still say, you know, hey, Frank, how are you doing on this? Do you get it? And not necessarily have to, you know, have you physically there, or reach out to you in another fashion, email, check in, whatever, remind. Just in terms of checking in. So like I said, I think these are good points, all good points. But I do think that with the remote platform that's being planned right now, that it does ameliorate some of the concerns that were expressed and were experienced in the spring.
Dr. and actually I should have brought this up in the curriculum meeting, but I know that the actual school day will be very tight, but also, you know, in the old model, the teachers were available for resource rooms. You know, usually it's during their lunch. Would that be something that we could possibly fit into the school day? As I know, you know, Wednesdays will be pretty much a remote day, and hopefully for continuing professional development and for teachers to make plans, but could there possibly be a resource room, like at the middle school, you know, math, they had a schedule that said this teacher was available from this time to this time. Can somehow at the middle school and the high school level, could that possibly be worked, that there would be a master schedule that, you know, a particular teacher would be available for children to pop in, you know, for all levels of math? This, you know, I don't know if that could be something that could be worked.
I think we could look into that. I think that the teachers volunteer to do that.
Yeah.
You know, during their lunch period, so we could definitely approach that. And I just wanted to, you know, just because we were talking about art, music, and physical education, and teachers of art, music, and physical education really, you know, view themselves as core teachers. And for many of our students, those opportunities for art, music, and PE are very important to them. So I just don't want to, you know, not see the, you know, I mean, everything is valuable, right? Multivariable calculus is important, and so is phys ed. So I know when I took calculus and I took, you know, all my AP courses, I did love going to my phys ed classes too. I love going to my art classes. So, you know, I think that well-rounded education, we, you know, trying to keep true to what we offer children, I think is very important. And when children are only going to be in one day a week, I think, you know, giving them a full day of school is what's really important to us. Of course, we're still in the planning stages, so, you know, we can refine as we can.
And again, you know, we all know this, but as we progress into the actual school year, if we are able to, we don't foresee necessarily the initial outset of the schedule remaining constant. There are going to be changes as we go forward. And certainly, you know, looking at the number of students who are participating, whose number of students whose parents and guardians are choosing to keep them home, all this comes into the interplay. I do want to, and Mrs. Lyons, Kara's had her hand up now for 25 minutes. Hi, Kara. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone because we've come really far. If you think about all the things that were reported out, right, we've started to take on an incredible lift. So I know there'll be lots of twists and turns and shifts, but we've come really far. One of the things I wanted to just bring to the group is the idea of a policy on masks. So it is up to the local district to have a policy. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on formalizing a policy. Of course, there are medical exemptions, but I think it might help families and staff feel a lot better if there's a formalized policy.
I actually, and I can share it, I have our draft plan. We're all working on this. Let me just get to it. Can you all see that? Yeah, okay. You'll notice, please note, this plan is subject to regular change. If I can get to it, let me try and see here. We know that facial coverings are going to be an important part of not only returning to school, just like they're required if you want to go to the supermarket, but they're going to be an important component of staying in school. You know, getting back into school is one thing. Being there the following week is a totally different thing. And the more that we can do to reduce the potential spread of COVID-19, the better off we're going to be. We know that there are going to be individuals who wearing a facial covering is going to be impossible for health reasons or underlying health concerns. However, our approach is going to be, you'll see here, face masks will be required by age-appropriate students at arrival and dismissal, during hallway transition and other building movements, on school buses, and where distancing is not possible. Up right above it, face coverings to be worn by staff and students, particularly older students, at all times where feasible. That's going to be our approach to facial coverings. Our expectation is that even though you're in a classroom and you're 6 feet apart, wearing a mask is going to be what we want you to do. Now, we understand, and I know that some school districts are trying to figure out ways to, oh, and I got Dr. Longabordi, I got a thumbs up from her, so that means medical professionals are supporting us. Thanks, Doc. There are going to be instances where, you know, kids fidget with their masks, take them off, all of these things. We know that's going to happen. Some school districts are looking to put mask requirements in their codes of conduct with disciplinary consequence. I don't think that's the appropriate approach, in my opinion. I think the appropriate approach is education, and, you know, making sure that just like anything else, right? We use the seatbelt as an analogy way back when we first started talking about this. You know, we need to help folks to understand that all this is a mechanism so that we can continue to do this important work together in person. And that's going to be a big component moving forward. That's going to be our expectation, Kara, and we're going to promulgate that, you know, as we continue to move forward. We know we're going to have conversations. Part of our plan is that, you know, everyone we have masks for everyone, and we'll have the ability to support that there. And for folks who cannot wear masks, we'll also, of course, accommodate them there. But there are going to be times when that's a non-negotiable, and that's when you're in the buildings, if you don't have any other reason. Now, children need, and so do adults, mask breaks. That's going to be part of the day. The flow of the day is going to be different than it was in September of 2019. We know that, and we know that there are going to be children who playing with their masks. We know that all these things are going to happen, but that it still needs to be part of our planning. Does that hit on what you were thinking, Kara?
Yes, thank you.
Sure thing.
I just wanted to add that with my committee yesterday, we really talked a lot about masks as well. And I wanted to, you know, let you know that we all felt that it was necessary for the kids to wear the mask as much as possible in the classroom. If they had to take breaks, our thoughts were they can go out to the hallway, take a 5-minute break, you know, take off their mask, put their mask back on after 5 minutes, wash their hands, and go back to class. We really recommend that the kids wear the mask in the class and during all classes, because we have people that are sickly, older people with high morbidities, and we want to ensure that everybody's safe. We also have children that are sickly and that cannot, you know, tolerate having the disease. So we really have to be careful with everybody. So for the safety of the district, we really want to try to keep everybody with masks on as much as possible. That's all.
Thanks, Maggie. I mean, that's going to keep us in school, and that's going to get more of us back to school. You know, when we put these mitigating factors in place, that's what's going to help us remain in and be able to build upon entry. Thanks, Kara. Rosemary, I just wanted to make sure that, thanks for being with us as always, Rosemary, President of the Board of Ed, and just wanted to see if you had anything.
Yep, just one quick comment, you know, just for everyone. I do sit on the operations overall committee, and each week I'm just amazed at all the subcommittees that spin off from our overall committees. It is mind-boggling the amount of work. And what I wanted you to know is that the board does have appreciation of the work that is really entailed as we go through this unprecedented time. I just had to mention that because I did sit in the meeting last Friday, as Dr. Tice said, and then their individual report outs, which means there were additional meetings that I didn't go to, and that's fine because you all are the experts, but it just gives an appreciation for the broad spectrum of work that has to go through. So I just wanted to make sure that you are all, every single one of you, aware that the board has a great appreciation for this. And I will say today, personally, I did learn something, Maggie, from you, because I'm a big proponent of throwing on a pair of gloves. I have to rethink that now. I really do. But aside from that, thank you to everybody. I am going to work in Frank Stefanelli's group in my next life, because every school property I step on, if I see anything wrong, I step aside and put a call into Frank or to Ann or to Dr. Ricker, whoever, to let them know, you know, I see this isn't right. Can we take care of it? And it's taken care of. So thank you. If you see something, say something. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, lots today. I already have you at 90 minutes. I don't like to do that to you, but it is a big week. There was a lot to report out. As I mentioned, we are recording this one. We will put everything together in our minutes and send them out to you so that you have them as well. We are going to be sharing via Facebook Live an update this week where we're collecting questions ahead of time and also answering the questions that were already asked. The good news is this: almost every question is the same. It's just a variation based upon, you know, the individualized person. So I think we're in pretty good position to be able to answer as many questions as we can. We are also slated to put up our draft plan for folks in our community to be able to begin to look at and begin to think about and plan for themselves. And of course, at our building levels, we will be reaching out to our parents and guardians following Governor Cuomo's update next week. That's important. Remember that still you know, exists on the horizon. There is also the possibility that Governor Cuomo could come out next week and he could say, hey, I'm going to come back and see you in 3 weeks and I'll let you know. So, you know, these are the rolling challenges that we have to be prepared for. I don't see any reason why we would think that the governor would approach this question any differently than he did in the spring. And you'll remember in the spring, he just kept telling you, we're closed for the next 30 days. I'll be back in 30 days. I'll let you know where we're at. And so maybe the time frame will shorten, but it certainly won't fall below 2 weeks because that's your 14-day incubation period. Well, you know, by and large. And so just prepare for that mentally and emotionally. And of course, we'll be back next week to see where we're at. Any final good of the order type stuff? Thank you, everybody. Any questions, comments, concerns, burning issues? I am going to put the link to the video that Layla shared with me, and that's your carry around shield. And you can take a look at that at your leisure. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. See you next time.
Thank you.